G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Trewin. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it. Welcome, everyone. Today I'm interviewing Tim Tutt from Clear Query, based in Washington, D.C., United States. Thanks for your time today, Tim.
Hey, thanks much. Happy to be here.
Let's start with how we know each other. Katie from Kitcaster put us in touch. They've sent us quite a few great guests over the years, so I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I definitely appreciate yours as well, Troy.
Tell our audience a bit about your business, what it does and how it makes money.
Sure thing. Yeah. So Night Shift Development is the name of the company, but ClearQuery is our core product. We're, a product company that focuses on data analytics. We make it simple for people to get value from their data. So the product itself is really designed to make it dirt simple for people to ask questions of their data, drill into it, get analysis out of it. We primarily sell to other businesses, but frankly, anyone could use it.
Yep. Maybe give the audience some examples of what data is being analysed and how that provides value to the businesses.
Sure. Yeah. So, if you think about, any data that you might collect in a business, whether that's revenue, sales data, marketing data, if I'm interested in, hey, how many people did we have come to our website from a particular marketing ad, or how much revenue did we receive over the last 30 months? You can literally ask questions as simply as I just spoke them, and get back interesting, visualizations and graphics across that data. That's kind of the start of where we built the application, but it's also expanded to other interesting ways to drill into your data to find hidden relationships between data points of interest there.
Right. How did you start out?
Yeah, so I used to work for a long time as a data engineer. I was software developer by trade. Spent a long time building large scale search and discovery platforms for major organizations, primarily in the government space. And one of my last jobs prior to me starting this company was a role where I kind of played middleman between my end users and their data. So my end users would come to me, ask questions. I'd go run nice big queries against our big data store, come back, give them some answers. They'd usually have some type of follow-up. I go back, ask additional questions, and usually it's just kind of this wash, rinse, repeat cycle. There was a team of 13 of us that were supporting about 400 different analysts, and my co-founder and I really got to a point where we said, hey, listen, this is painful for all of us. We have a lot of questions that we're answering. And as most engineers will tell you, if we have to do something more than once, we're going to automate it and never do it again.
Yep.
So we started working down that process. We started automating a little bit of what we were doing there, but said, you know what? Maybe we should actually go out and build a product so that people could step in the middle and get ourselves out of the middle and step in and allow them to ask questions of their own data. So we built that product. Started that about 7 years ago now and been running ever since.
Right. And as Will Ferrell says in Zoolander, AI is so hot right now. He didn't say AI, obviously, but you're remiss of me not to ask your take on AI and how that's, were you guys deep into AI from day one? Obviously, ChatGPT was released, was at the end of November 2022. So, yeah, how does AI fit in the picture for you?
Yeah, so ChatGPT was definitely a bit later. We were operating using some interesting machine learning models to, hey, how do we advance this? How do we help understand intent? How do we do entity extraction? Those types of things to build queries. So we built a pretty robust platform. We use other models, not ChatGPT in particular, other machine learning models for doing things like entity extraction and how we understand unstructured text. But big problem with ChatGPT for us has always been it doesn't run behind firewall, and a lot of our customers need their data to be sensitive, protected. So that doesn't necessarily work for us in a general case. But in addition to that, we also have, uh, or at least most customers have not enough infrastructure to run something like a chat GPT. So throwing their data outside of their organization doesn't really work. They need it to be deterministic, and that's where ClearQuery really kind of fits a big gap there.
So you started 7 years ago, 2017. How old were you then?
At the time, wow, yeah, fun question. Yeah, no, I was 27 at the time I started the company.
Yep. And do you have some key numbers you can share to illustrate the growth of the business?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we started on, I think I mentioned at the beginning, the name of the company is Night Shift Development. The reason the name of the company is Night Shift Development is because both my co-founder and myself had bills to pay. So we kept our day jobs and worked on building product on nights and weekends. So at the beginning, that's what we were doing. I went full time later in 2018 on the company. So starting from 2018, it was me as the first full-time employee. Today, we're at 25 employees, which has been pretty fun growth path for us, even through COVID.
That's great. That's phenomenal growth over 7 years. When was the moment you felt like you had succeeded?
I haven't yet. It's an interesting question. I think, look, we've been growing. We've had a lot of success. We've been a very successful company. However, success is a very interesting question. I think there's a lot of growth that we have and a lot of things that we want to hit from a roadmap perspective, from a product, a lot of growth that we want to hit from a interesting, growth perspective as a company. And for us, what that means is, look, there's still a lot for us to do. We're not done yet, and I look at success as almost an end state. I don't know that we necessarily have hit that end state yet. We have a lot of things that we want to continue doing here. That said, I think certainly around 2020 was a point where we hit late 2020 was a point where we hit a critical mass where we really started growing. We brought on at that point about 9 employees as we started really ramping up some of our major contracts and growing from a revenue perspective.
What does success look like to you?
Yeah, success is really getting to an eventual endpoint, which is, whether that's an exit of the company, down the road, or, whether that's going public. Same time, I think even at that metric, I'll be looking at, what the next lever is. How do we, continue getting a little bit higher there?
Have you read any of John Warrillow's awesome 3 books, Built to Sell, Automatic Customer, and The Art of Selling a Business?
I've read The Art of Selling a Business. Yes.
Yeah, but the other 2 books I think are great as well and relevant for you, particularly the automatic customer. And his podcast is excellent. It's been going 7 or 8 years. I listen to 3 or 4 episodes a week to go through the back catalogue. I'd highly recommend listening to those if you're already thinking one day of exiting or listing.
Got it. No, that's great. I'll definitely check those out.
I'll shoot them through to you. Yeah.
Please.
Number one thing you'd recommend to marketing a fast growing business?
Yeah, marketing a fast-growing business, I'll say for any founder, any beginning CEO, you are the number one salesperson, you are the number one marketer. I think as we started and as we really started building this business out, one of the things that I realized is that talking about my business, no matter where I was, whether I am on a plane, on a train, I'm, walking in the streets, being able to talk about my business, having business cards on me at any given time, and being able to give that, 2 sentence, here's my quick elevator pitch, so you quickly understand what it is that we do, has become immensely important. And on top of that, I would say being always ready to sell, because you never know when you're going to run into people that are like, "Hey, that's interesting to me. tell me more. How can we drive into this? Perfect example. A couple of months ago, I was quite literally on a train, and I ran into someone, met them on this train. We start having a quick conversation, find out he lives and breathes in data, wind up giving him a live demo on the train. And, that's turned into a potential sales opportunity for us. So, yeah, that marketing aspect really is, as that, as the owner, as the founder, you have to be ready at any given moment and be ready and be willing to talk about it at any given time. I've read a lot of or seen a lot of stories where people don't talk about their business early on enough, and they really should.
Yep, totally agree. How did you fund your business?
So we've been completely bootstrapped. So we started from zero, and everything has been, like I said, we started off saying, "Hey, we're going to keep our day jobs." When we landed our first big contracts, that allowed us to kind of start building on top of that and take a step in. So everything has been from the company earning its own money. While we also had that, initial base of early on jobs there.
If you were to start up today with plenty of funding, would you go into your industry?
Interesting question. I think I would probably go into the technology industry in general. Whether or not I'd hit the data analytics space is a different question. Data analytics space is a pretty crowded market. We built a pretty compelling product. If I were to start the business today, there are a lot of competitors now that are stepping in and doing similar things here. We have an advantage where we were a little bit ahead. We were 7 years ahead of doing some of the things that we're doing, which means now we're focusing on the future and focusing a little bit further on. Product might look different if we were to go into this industry, but would probably go into the broader industry in general.
Can you outline the most stressful point in your small business growth journey so our audience can learn from it?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll tell you, building a company, and especially as you start hiring employees, that's the most terrifying part. One of the things that I joke, but also I am very serious about is, the thing that I live and breathe on is I have 24 other families that I am responsible for. So, learning all of the bits of how you make sure payroll is there, how you make sure you're keeping those people paid, and you don't run into these, major issues that you might run into where, hey, I can't, pay is a terrifying, factor. It's one of those things that you definitely have to prepare for. If that means, hey, listen, I've got to put forth money myself to make sure payroll is done because we have a gap because a client hasn't paid us, or make sure we don't hire until we have enough in the bank to set up an individual for a certain period of time. That's kind of what we do. When we started, I never hired anyone until we said we can make sure you're covered for a year. If I couldn't do that, I couldn't hire anyone. That was a big stop point for me, and that was just the way we operated. So for every company, it's different. Sure, there are obviously a lot of different. You could go and take loans, you could go and do other things, but we wanted to do this as cleanly as possible without taking on debt on the balance sheet or taking on outside investors.
Yep. What area in business do you feel you've had to work on the most to add the greatest value?
I think for us, growth has really been built on continued product development. So there's continued product development in very interesting ways, which allows us to sell a very compelling product. So we go out, building that sales team to make sure that we're able to go out and sell and tell the story in a very compelling and convincing way has always been the most interesting thing for us here. That's been the biggest lever for growth. Having a good product and having a good sales team that can tell the story with that product.
What have you enjoyed the least about managing fast growth?
Fast growth is always interesting. Listen, people are all different. Managing people is a very interesting story. I think, for myself, I love the employees that we have. I love the team that we've, grown over the years. every personality is different. I think the thing that I dislike the most is making sure all of those personalities mesh together well, and making sure that, hey, we can handle the issues that arise between those individuals. Um, Outside of that, I would probably say the biggest thing is the operational aspects of HR benefits. It's a lot of things that you never thought you'd want to learn. I've learned more about legalese than I ever wanted to learn. But it's a necessary factor of business.
Yeah, just back on that people point, my favorite Texan saying is the definition of conflict is two people in the same county.
Two people. I like that. That's good.
Sums it up.
Yep, absolutely.
And what do you love most about growing a small business?
In a way, some of the same things. I think we've also had some really interesting points in business. I think one of the most exciting things for me is seeing we've had, what was it, four individuals over the last 7 years that for the first time bought their first homes. And we're able to do that because of the business that we're growing. So seeing people be able to succeed and have, their own personal growth is super exciting for us.
What has been the biggest mindset shift for you in your small business growth journey?
I've had to learn a lot of patience. I think I've always had a little bit of patience, but I've had to learn a lot more. It's definitely, listen, and that's between customers, people, that's, with vendors, etc. You have to learn to, manage your expectations in terms of what other people can do. Other people are also dealing with a lot, so you can't also expect them to be running at your pace. They have their own things going on, but understanding how to do that and manage that along with your own priorities is a very important piece here.
The number one habit you think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain?
Mm. Number one habit I would probably say is I'd probably loop back to that same thing I just said is this patience, understanding how to hone in on this. How do I make sure that I am not blowing up at the wrong times? How do I make sure that I am focusing on the right things? There's a little bit of a schedule that you need to maintain at the end of the day. My calendar has always been constantly filled, and understanding how to prioritize. Actually, you know what, if I were to flip back and answer that question again, prioritization is 100% the number one thing a small business owner needs to understand, because there are a million fires to put out. You need to understand which fire to put out first.
Yeah, I love that saying. If everything's a priority, nothing is a priority.
That's exactly right.
One or more of these growth pillars standing in the way of you living the lifestyle you signed up for? People, strategy, marketing, funding, or systems? We have a free ebook filled with actions and templates on each of these growth pillars. Download for free from our website, growasmallbusiness.com. Can you talk to how you've added people to the team, some wins, mistakes, and advice for those listening?
Yeah, talk on some wins here. I've got a handful of people, and I think I've done a really good job of hiring for culture. That's kind of one of the big things that we focus on, is hiring for people that fit within the culture and the environment that we want. I kind of have a don't hire assholes policy.
Yep.
So hire people that can work well together, and listen. Sometimes there are issues where it's like I wind up in a place where I wind up in the middle, where I hear the same story from two different individuals. And I'm like, if you two get on the phone together instead of, maybe talking over Slack or whatever that is, you might actually solve this problem on your own. You don't necessarily need to be here. But one of the biggest ones I think I have is, most of the time I don't have a lot of those issues. Those are few and far between. So I think that's been um, a very great thing that we've done in terms of culture hiring, where we don't have so many of those issues in particular. That said, You definitely run into those, mistakes of you'll have a hire here or there where, hey, it wasn't the right fit. And it's not the right fit on both sides in most cases, right? And once you find that, if you can find that quickly, you're able to kind of adjust and maneuver in the right way here.
What are some of the things you recommend to building a sustainable and kick-ass culture to help with the growth?
Yeah. When we started building the company, one of the things that I kind of focused on was again, this, no assholes culture. Uh, B is we don't want to be micromanaging, right? I don't need to be in your business. If I'm hiring you, I am hiring you to do a job. I don't necessarily expect you to know everything, right off the bat, but I expect you to be able to learn how to do it and figure it out without me needing to breathe down your neck and talk to you about how to do it, which means great for the most part, my team runs itself. They know what their jobs are, they know what the core goals are. And I think the other big thing is transparency, being transparent on where we are in terms of business, in terms of what our goals are for this year, et cetera. That becomes a critical aspect in terms of making sure that the team can be as effective as possible and the culture, because everyone is driving towards the same goal, is driven from within.
Tell our audience how you've handled balance.
Yeah, balance is a fun one. I think I spend maybe more time than most on, and I think most founders will say this, your company is your baby, right?
Mm.
So you do have to have those moments of how do I break away, how do I relax and step away for a moment. They're not going to happen often. My team jokes with me that it's like even when you're off you're on, and that's true. But when I'm off, I am also in a very different headspace. I am in a headspace of this is my relax reset period. Everything else will survive and make its way through. So if something is going on and I can't necessarily get to it, it'll be okay. I don't have to handle every fire. I've built a team that I can trust to manage those things. So handling that balance is really, about building the team that you can trust to, manage your baby effectively.
Yeah, really good point. And how much professional development have you invested in yourself?
Quite a bit. I spend a lot of time at conferences. I spend a lot of time reading, and even in that personal time, it is, reading books on growth, reading blog posts on other companies and other founders and other techniques that people have done. I'm a part of several professional organizations where it's, focused on, hey, how do we build out the right sales culture. And sales is not something that I'm necessarily used to. So it's understanding those other parts of the business that I am not necessarily attuned to by default. That has been, I think, the biggest part of my professional growth. I've learned, like I said, a lot more about operations and finance. Luckily, I have now people in place to help manage those things, but I know enough to be able to understand and step in and help assist in how we drive those things as appropriate.
And have you had mentors or coaches along the way?
I've had a number of advisors over the years, people that I have worked with in the past that I frankly have been more than valuable in terms of making sure I keep my head on straight when I'm making hires or making the right decisions. Hey, I just need to run this by you. What do you think? And I've had multiple people. I would say the number one thing I would say is having one mentor, having one advisor is never enough. Having multiple with different perspectives is immensely valuable because at the end of the day, it's your decision and you have to take in all of the inputs and all of the other factors to help make the right decision for your business.
Do you have a board of directors or advisors?
I have a board of advisors, and my board of advisors is really where I go to for a lot of that help.
And do you have regular meetings with those advisors, or is it just more one-on-one?
More one-on-one and very very specific to a particular issue usually.
Yeah, great. All right, Tim, we're on to our final five questions. What do you think's the hardest thing in growing a small business?
Like I said, the hardest thing earlier, a note is, people. People is definitely challenging as you continue to grow. As a founder, your number one job is to make sure that, those people are fed and taken care of, but also that they are able to help you achieve the goals that you're trying to with your business.
Totally agree. I think I say it every third podcast. I believe people are the hardest thing in growing a small business and your greatest asset.
Yep.
Favorite business book would just help you the most?
One of my favorite books, and I talk about this, I think every time I have this conversation, is a book called The Hard Things About Hard Things.
Oh, I love that book. Has it been
Yeah,
Ben Horowitz?
Ben Horowitz. Yep, that's exactly right. Yeah, it is hands down my favorite. I refer to it and read it, over and over again, often.
No, my favorite part of that book is probably listened to it about 4 or 5 years ago. I was running around Christchurch in New Zealand, literally running. Went for a jog, and I had to stop. But when I heard this bit, he says in the book, "If you've got to eat shit, don't nibble."
Yep, that's exactly right. Yeah, I love that one. Yeah, you just dive right in. That's absolutely right. Yeah, I think one of the most impactful quotes for me, especially in terms of building culture, was take care of uh the people, the product, and the profits in that order.
Yeah,
And I think that has been immensely impactful for how we built our company here.
yeah. Have you read Crossing the Chasm by Jeffrey Moore?
It's actually on my bookshelf. It's one I'm reading right now.
Great. No, it's an awesome book. I think it was in the 90s for the audience. It's a really tech-specific book about how you get your products across the valley of death or the chasm. Yeah, it's a terrific read if you're in the tech space. Any great podcasts or online learning tools you use for your own professional development?
Podcasts are hard for me. I think I listen to a good handful every now and then, but they're more sporadic. I think what I tend to do most often is find a good blog post, find a good a listen recommendation from other founders, et cetera, and I say, yep, this is a particular topic that I'm interested in. I'll listen to those. So I don't have a specific podcast that I listen to on a regular basis, but I do listen to a good handful on topics that are valuable for me.
One tool you'd recommend to help grow a small business?
Biggest tool is a very carefully managed calendar. I use a tool called Calendly, which is immensely helpful for scheduling things. I have actually done a lot with making sure that I have set times where you can only schedule a meeting in these blocks because frankly, if I don't block time for myself to work on things, I
Hmm.
will never get anything done. So I think there's actually even a whole uh, I don't know if it's a field, but there are whole blog posts about time blocking in particular, which I find again particularly relevant for me, and it's one of the things that I do often.
Yep. And have you looked at Google a few months ago released a more advanced version of their calendar, which looks like it's going head to head with Calendly. I mean, I use Calendly at the moment. It's awesome. But have you had a look at the Google version?
I have not had a look at the Google version. When was that released? I think I missed that one.
Would have been late 23. It's on my list to check out. But yeah, because it would be great to just have it all in our Google ecosystem rather than, in Calendly's great. There's a few downfalls on it. But yeah, it might be worth checking out.
Absolutely. I'll definitely check that one out.
And being a nerd like me, I'm sure you're going to enjoy the research.
Yep.
Finally, my favorite question. What would you tell yourself on day one of starting out 7 years ago?
Ooh, oh, that's a great question. Day one, 7 years ago, it's really just going to be pushed through. Look, there's going to be a lot of hard days. There's going to be a lot of, points where you're like, am I doing the right thing? Should I, call it done? It's just keep pushing through. And I think for any founder, it's probably the most important thing. If if you have strong conviction in what you're building and what you're doing, you have strong conviction in your team, you will make it through the obstacles. Some of these things are going to be painful. You will find a way through as long as you just keep pushing through.
Great. Thanks so much for your time today, Tim. I've really enjoyed our chat, and congratulations to you, your co-founder, and your team. Terrific growth over 7 years, going from one full-time equivalent yourself, jumping into the business first, up to 25 now, and helping a lot of businesses around the data analytics space. So thanks very much.
Absolutely. Hey, thank you much, Troy. I really appreciate it.
We're getting some great iTunes reviews. For those listening, please pop over to your podcast app and leave us a review.